epilepsy. Which games should we tell them not to play?
The Nintendo R&D experts gave him a list of games. But before this information was released to customers, Mr. Sarvas says Nintendo lawyers reduced the number of games listed.
It was a pretty sizable list. Each game represents hundreds of thousands of units out there on the market. And if you have a list of 30-some games as opposed to 12 or 15, that's going to cut into your profits.
Mr. Sarvas says Nintendo soon decided to stop releasing the names of games that might trigger seizures as complaints grew. I asked Howard Lincoln whether Nintendo had acted correctly.
Nintendo first became aware of this photosensitive epilepsy issue many years ago, and as soon as it became aware of it, it took steps in Japan in terms of the manufacture of games, as well as taking steps in the warning and in instruction manuals and whatnot. Am I, as a parent, and as a grandparent, satisfied that Nintendo has done everything it could to make sure that its products are safe and that consumers are warned, and that we did that as soon as we knew about it? You bet. I wouldn't be at Nintendo. I wouldn't be connected with anybody that would, that would expose anybody to that kind of risk.
In the UK, television programmes are regulated to reduce the risk of them triggering a seizure. The ITC guidelines set limits on flashing images and spatial patterns. There are no guidelines at all in the video game industry. Potential problems in programmes and video games can be detected by a machine developed at Birmingham's Aston University by Professor Graham Harding.
Okay.
We took him 6 Nintendo games to test.
So this game, Graham, Mega Man X, which was the one that Joey Roccaforte was playing when he had his seizures, did this pass or fail your test?
This game failed the test on 2 things. One flashes and the other on a repetitive pattern. You can see the bright flashes occurring, and you can see that there's 4 within a second. So of course, as soon as this occurs, it triggers and crosses the guideline and then fails quite dramatically, and then fails again a short period later. If you look, there's this high contrast pattern along the top here, which comes on and goes off, and each time it comes on, it triggers the computer and fails the guidelines.
What about this game, Graham, which is Mario Kart Double Dash that you can get in the shops now? How did this fare?
This one failed, as you can see. Again, it crossed the division line there, and you can see why it failed, that this change in pattern is actually producing a series of repetitive luminance changes.
The computer industry doesn't apply ITC guidelines, so other companies may have games that fail the test. Out of the 6 Nintendo games we tested, 4 failed, and 2, Super Mario Bros. 1 and Legend of Zelda The Wind Waker, passed the UK guidelines.
Where's the responsibility lie in this situation?
In my opinion, the industry should apply the broadcast guidelines because they've been shown to work, and the risks to children would disappear.
Now, they do put warnings somewhere in this box, don't they? Are they adequate, do you think?
75% of those at risk will not know they're photosensitive. So, yes, you're helping 1/4 of them, but 3/4 of them won't know until they have their first seizure.
And also, this is the warning booklet, isn't it? I mean, it's really small print, and it's not the first thing a child's going to go for when they open the box.
No, it would be better if the warning was on the outside of the box.
Probably the most revealing insight into the business of video games is a recent document from 1999. In it, games engineers in Japan said they didn't want any regulation of sequences because the games would be made less exciting. We put what we'd found out to Nintendo. They dispute the claim that they haven't addressed the problem. They said they provided warnings to consumers in 1991 and have applied internal guidelines, modelled on those used in the Japanese TV industry, to their game design since 1998. Nintendo said that they are aware of Professor Harding's testing system and the UK TV guidelines. They say they would evaluate any device that may reduce the risk of seizures. Nintendo added that they couldn't comment on any current court cases in America. The Nintendo personalities which saw the company through the glory years of the 1980s and 90s, Mr. Arakawa, Mr. Lincoln and Mr. Yamauchi, are now taking a back seat. But what about the once so humble games maestro, Mr. Miyamoto? He's transformed into an unlikely rock star figure, adored by fans wherever he goes, like at this visit to a London shop last year.
We've had here the likes of David Bowie, Marilyn Manson, The Darkness, but the response this guy got when he came out was bigger than any response they got. It was just phenomenal.
Fans jostled for Miyamoto's signature. One young fan, Richard Easton, queued all night outside the shop in the cold to meet his hero.
So the first 10 people got this signed by Miyamoto, and just to show that I was one of the first 10 people, they actually gave you one of these little arm wristbands.
I was just getting my ticket for the train to go home, and he just turned up to be standing next to me waiting for the train. So I approached him and we talked for 15 minutes about games. He just seemed like a really modest bloke, really, really nice bloke. I've never met a nicer man.
Next stop for me, Hollywood. At the height of its power, Nintendo earned as much as all the American movie studios combined, and made more profit than any of them. I'm meeting Carl Johnson, a film student and Miyamoto's #1 fan. He runs an internet site called Miyamoto Shrine, and if anyone can tell me about Miyamoto and his role at Nintendo, it's Carl.
So what is it that you love so much about Miyamoto's games?
Miyamoto makes games unlike any other video game designer. He creates virtual playgrounds where you can lose yourself, in a childlike wonder.
Well, Miyamoto's one thing, but there wouldn't be Nintendo with just Miyamoto. What do fans think of Mr. Yamauchi, the boss?
It's sort of a good cop, bad cop kind of thing.
Right.
Where you have Yamauchi, he's the bad cop behind the scenes doing sort of the hard-nosed things that he thinks will benefit the business in. And you've got Miyamoto, who is making the games and doing the wonderful things and giving the public what they want.
But he doesn't always give the public what they want. Carl took me to play Super Mario Bros. 2. It was expected to be another Miyamoto masterpiece, to follow his massive hit, Super Mario Bros. 1.
Super Mario is back!
Super Mario Bros. 2 was a big US seller in October 1988. Mario fans snapped it up, and Nintendo reaped the profits. But many were disappointed when, far from being made from scratch, Nintendo had taken an existing game, Doki Doki Panic, and simply changed its characters for Mario ones.
It doesn't have the Mario Miyamoto stamp.